Okay, we are back with another book tag. This is the new reader book tag. So I saw Charlie Walls, Walls of Horror, do this tag, and I thought it was a really nice one, especially thinking back about how books and reading and writing have influenced my life in some really big ways. So I knew I definitely wanted to do this one. So there are 9 prompts, but the framing for this tag is whether you've been reading for a month or a couple of years, everybody starts somewhere. This tag is about celebrating the beginning of your reading journey and encouraging others who are just getting started. So I love that framing as well. So let's get into it. The first question is, what made you want to become a reader? Was there a specific book, person, or moment that sparked your interest? So I grew up in a household full of books, like really full of books. So when I was a little kid, my dad was massively into Stephen King. So I remember seeing his like big chunky copy of It on the bedside table and being really scared by the cover art when I would see it. My mom went through a phase of collecting Penguin paperbacks, and there was just bookshelves and bookshelves and bookshelves of them. And really there were many rooms in their house that were just stacked with books. So I think that growing up in that context has definitely been a huge source of inspiration for me for reading in general, but also like a lot of the specific books that I read as a kid came from those bookshelves as well, because that's what I had access to. I will also say that my mum works in a library, right? So that is definitely a big influencing factor as well. So there is a constant rotation of books in their house, and there always has been, and I love that. If I think of a specific book, I do remember learning to read with a book called Rabbit Digs a Burrow. It's still on my kids' bookshelf somewhere. I'll see if I can pull it up for you on the screen. So I remember enjoying the repetition in that book as I was learning to read. So yeah, there's a specific book there as well. Question 2, what was the first book that made you think, I love reading? I think, still on the rabbits theme, it might have been Watership Down by Richard Adams. And I believe that I was possibly about 7 when I read this. I can't remember exactly. I will say that I'm not sure that it is a book intended for children. I did read a lot of adult books as quite a small kid, which I now realise I didn't kind of fully understand, but I still loved reading them anyway. But I do remember feeling completely immersed in the world and the characters and the peril of the rabbits' lives in that book. I don't remember thinking, I love reading, but I do remember that feeling of being completely lost in the book. I remember that quite distinctly. Question 3, what's one reading habit you're still trying to develop? So I had a video a couple of weeks ago about trying to get back into reading after a kind of long-term decline in the amount of time I was spending reading. So I would say that I'm still trying to develop those habits of finding ways to just inject a bit of extra reading in my day in a way that does not feel overwhelming for me, in a way that works with my energy and motivation. So I'm still working on that. Which genre surprised you the most? Or what's a genre you never expected to enjoy? I kind of like hate talking about genres. I think I get like a bit of genre phobia. So I have read in the past, as a kid and a younger person, I read a lot of literary fiction, and I read quite a bit of horror. I have to say I have never enjoyed fantasy. Kind of hesitate to say that on BookTube, but I've tried, I think, like I maybe got through The Hobbit. I tried Harry Potter, not for me. Tried Lord of the Rings, not for me. Also the movies, not for me. I'm really sorry, everybody. Those genres are not for me. Also, I don't really like romance at all. In terms of genre fiction, I do tend to read kind of horror, ghost stories, thrillers, mysteries, crime to some extent. So I can't really think of a genre that has surprised me, and maybe that's because I'm not really engaging in depth with the genres that I expect to dislike, right? So maybe that's something that I should be doing. So if you can recommend, for example, a fantasy for someone who thinks they don't like fantasy, let me know in the comments. What's one book that intimidated you before you started reading and you still want to read it someday? So there are some books that I've never got through because they just felt very dense, right? So in his video, Charlie mentioned Moby Dick. I never managed to get through that. Didn't get beyond, well, not that many pages really. War and Peace. I mean, that's a classic one, right? But I never managed to do that. But there are some that I found intimidating before I started that I did manage to get through. So Catch-22 took me several attempts to get into the story. And then once I got into it, I remember that I enjoyed reading it, but I did find it hard to get into. I borrowed a copy off a friend, and I kind of really wanted to read it. I was probably maybe a teenager at the time. I still have that copy, by the way. Have not returned that. A bit late now. But so that I found quite intimidating to get into that. Another one that was intimidating was A Clockwork Orange, because of how it's written in this kind of like, I don't know how to describe it really, not maybe like dialect. It's written in this dialect of this sort of like future dystopian world of how young people speak. That was also quite difficult to get into and get used to, and then once you get into the rhythm of it, it was kind of okay. You get used to it basically. Another book that was quite intimidating was Crime and Punishment, again because of the style of writing, I think, and that particular style of Russian literature. I've noticed several Russian books that I've read from a similar era have a similar sort of narrative style. But again, once I'd sort of got over the hump, then I enjoyed, for the most part, those books. Didn't really enjoy Clockwork Orange, if I'm honest with you. It's a bit bleak. Question 6, how has reading changed your life so far? This is a great question. So reading has influenced me to kind of do some slightly mad things in my life. So I'll give you a few examples. I did make a very short about this a few months ago, but I didn't really talk about it in depth. So when I was a teenager, I read The Outsider by Albert Camus, and that had a massive influence on me, and that prompted me to do my first really big bit of writing, and I wrote a 40,000 word novel as a 16-year-old that was sort of highly derivative of The Outsider. It didn't go anywhere. I have a video where I read bits of it, which was quite funny. So that it made me want to write, you know? So that was a big thing. Actually reading ancient Greek philosophy made me want to study philosophy at university, and I can't remember how I got interested in reading ancient Greek philosophy in the first place. I've got no recollection of that, but I wanted to study philosophy at uni, And I did eventually, but I also wanted to study classics. I applied to study classics at uni. I ended up not doing that, but I did learn ancient Greek for a year because I had it in my head that I wanted to read philosophy, read, you know, like Plato and all that in the language that it was written in. Actually, Plato's dialogues are quite a good one if you're like a beginner Greek reader. We did read some of those texts in class. So that was fun. So really big influence in my life then. I also decided at some point, after reading a short story collection by Leo Tolstoy, I decided that I was going to go to Russia and that I would be able to sort of write something life-changing there on a 2-week holiday by myself, aged 18. I did write something. I still haven't reread that. I might do a video on that one day. But basically, reading different things over the course of my life, especially as a young person, influenced me to make some mad decisions, which led to really great, really diverse experiences in my life that I would not have had I not done so much reading in the first place. So it has had a really big influence on my life, absolutely. What is one reading myth you've discovered that isn't true? This is a good one. So it says, for example, you have to finish every book. So I only recently discovered that this actually is a myth and that you don't have to finish every book because I often felt like an obligation to get through things, or that I had to finish one book before I started another book. So actually that's been a big one for me, realising that I can start another book and still have another book on the go, and that I don't have to just come back to the same book over and over again. I can just kind of pick what I want. So that is a recent discovery for me. That's great. Question 8, if you could ask experienced readers one question, what would it be? I would say if I could ask experienced book talkers or booktubers one question, it would be, how do you get through so many books? Because I see these videos where people are like, here's the 23 books I read this month. And I'm like, how? Like, what? Like, how many hours do you have in your day to be able to read that many books in a month? Because I could never. So that would be what I would ask them. Question 9, we're nearly done. What's one reading goal you hope to accomplish in the next year? Maybe trying a new genre would be a good one for me. Maybe fantasy or romance or something like that. I am willing to try new stuff. I feel like I'm like cringing as I say that. I would also have the goal of just trying to read more, but not necessarily more books in terms of number of books, but to spend more time reading. And I also would like to spend more time reading short stories published in literary magazines, because I'm only just discovering this world of literary magazines. And not only do I want to publish my own short stories there, but I'm also just discovering the wonderful richness, diversity, and depth of the short stories that are published across some of these magazines. And discovering this and reading a greater variety of short stories has been incredibly enriching. So that's something that I would like to continue doing. Okay, and the last step is to tag others. So I'll just say that if you're watching this video, consider yourself tagged, and tag me if you go on to make a video yourself as well, because I would love to hear about how reading and books has influenced you, shaped you as a reader, as a writer, as a person. Tell us. So that is everything for tonight. If you got all the way to the end of this video, thank you very much. Please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and give us a follow. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!